Hi folks, I hope you're okay today. It's good to be with you. Just been studying Wayne Grudem on the Canon in his systematic theology. I just want to share a few thoughts from Wayne Grudem's book. You can download it free for PDF, listen to his lectures on iTunes. But if you turn to Exodus 24:4, Exodus 24:4. Exodus 24:4. It says, "And Moses wrote all the words of the Lord, and rose up early in the morning, and builded an altar under the hill, and 12 pillars according to the 12 tribes of Israel." So right there, right early on in the inception of Jewish history, there was writing going on and recording in Deuteronomy 31:22. Deuteronomy 31:22. Deuteronomy 31:22. It says, "Moses therefore wrote this song the same day, and taught it the children of Israel." And you could go right through to Joshua 24:26, right up to 1 Samuel chapter 10 verse 25. So if you go to 1 Samuel chapter 10 verse 25. So what we're seeing here is there was established writing and recording going on. 1 Samuel chapter 10 verse 25. Then Samuel told the people the manner of the kingdom and wrote it in a book. And you could look at other references too, 1 Chronicles chapter 29, etc. Now, the last prophet to write was Malachi, which was in around about 435 BC. Now, the interesting thing about the research that Grudem mentioned, which I find very fascinating, that he looks at a variety of Jewish sources. So he looks at the Talmud, the Maccabees, and the Dead Sea Scrolls, etc. And what he notes is there was a unanimous concept within the culture of Judaism that the prophets had ceased since the time of Malachi, and that's important for our understanding of the Old Testament Canon. So he quotes, I think, 1 Maccabees chapter 4 verse 45, which talks about there are no prophets. He quotes Josephus in his book Against Apion, who talks about the books that we possess. He quotes the Babylonian Talmud and rabbinic sayings that talk about there is no more prophets since the time of Malachi. And he quotes the Dead Sea Scrolls. And he notes that in the New Testament, over 295 times, Jesus and the apostles quote the Old Testament, but never quote the Apocrypha. Then he makes a really fascinating comment about why we have the Apocrypha. He notes that Jude quotes 1 Enoch, chapter 68 verse 19, but he notes that that is not a scripture. So the overwhelming evidence of the New Testament is that the quotes of the Old Testament are the seen as scripture, and they don't quote the Apocrypha. And then Grudem really gives a brilliant reason for why the Catholics have the Apocrypha, and I find it very fascinating. He mentions the point that I find this really interesting, that in the time of Jerome, the church was becoming more Latinized and moving away from Greek, so the Pope wanted a Latin Bible. So he asked for the greatest scholar of the time and asked Jerome to translate the Greek, the Bible from Greek to Latin. When Jerome did that, he didn't want to put the Apocrypha in, but the Pope said put it in. Jerome said no. The Pope said put it in. Jerome said no. The Pope said put it in. Eventually, Jerome put the Apocrypha in the Vulgate. So it was only until 1546 was the Apocrypha actually publicly ratified as scripture in the Catholic Church, and it was done so. And I find this really fascinating, because it was not so long before there that Luther nailed his 95 Theses, and basically the Council of Trent in the Catholic Church were reacting to Luther and the Protestant Reformation, and the Apocrypha had information about baptizing the dead and saved by works, etc. Theologically, the Apocrypha suited the Catholic Church. So the putting of the Apocrypha within the canon of Scripture and making it Scripture, the Roman Catholic Church, when they did that in 1546, was actually a reaction to the Protestant Reformation, and they saw within the text of the Apocrypha ammunition that they could use against the Protestant Reformation. So that's why they actually put it in. The Protestant position is that we believe Scripture is Scripture because Scripture testifies to itself. The Catholic position is Scripture is Scripture because the Church states that it's Scripture, and that is the wrong position to take. So I hope that's been a help to you. You can go and read Wayne Grudem's Systematic Theology on the Canon of the Old Testament as a resource for this little talk. I hope it's been a blessing to you, and God bless.